Welcome to another installment of Power Athletes Masters of Movement, where we break down some of the simplest and most complex movements in the Power Athlete catalog of programs. And we do a deep dive, and we sit around, we discuss them, we break them up, and then we adjourn up to the lab, up to the gym to show you how to do them. Our movement for today, in memory of our good friend John Meadows, is the Meadows Row.
That is correct, John.
So for those of you guys that aren't familiar with Meadows Rows, they're very, very simple. If you do a Google search, I mean, the fact that not only did the man have such a big impact on bodybuilding and training, he got a row named after him while he was alive. So, I mean, like when I did some of his programming, they were a big staple. So the Meadows Row basically is a unilateral back movement. So it starts as you get in, you're going to have to stagger stance. But normally it's done with either like a T-bar row, but we also do them with Landmine Rows.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen is you're going to be able to walk dead up. The bar's going to be across your body. You're going to be nice flat back, bent over, and you're going to grab the bar open hand. And I think what he really liked about the row was actually the 2-inch collar and the bigger grip, that you could, not over grip it. And then from there, being able to really pull up nice and high and hit all those rhomboids in the lat in a really good position.
Yeah, and a big stretch within that lat. So positioning yourself in that staggered stance, not your chest, you don't want to be parallel with the ground. So upward, and then real an emphasis on that protraction and reach so we can get a big stretch. And then
the other thing he liked is to use 25s. So he liked to use smaller plates.
That's great.
And then also elevate your foot position. So I know for me, he was like, hey, what I want you to do is I want you to stand on like two thick bumpers, or on a thick bumper. I want you to use quarters, and I want you to get a real big stretch, and I want you to pull it up as high as you can. Don't short it. And we would do them for, heavy reps, a lot of heavy reps. So, I mean, it was always sets 8, 12, 15, go as heavy as you can, all out. So,
and is there a hold at the top, a pause at the top, or going for that pump, that mechanical tension?
I think the pause is always beneficial. The problem is I think what happens all too often when people pause, they start rotating. And there was a big cue about don't rotate, don't shift. Like set your hips at the position and don't create mechanical advantage to get a higher pull. So you want to set the back position, set the hips, set the knees, get everything. And then you really want to use, obviously the smaller plates and then an elevated position to get a lot of stretch. But you want to pull as high as you can while maintaining that good flat back.
Yeah.
You don't want to open and rotate and try to over pull this way so you can get a higher range of motion, because all you're doing is creating mechanical advantage.
Yeah, focusing on moving that shoulder blade versus just moving the bar through space.
Yeah, so I program them in Jack Street with great frequency. Grindstone gets them, Hammer gets them. So I also know they're in Field Strong.
Yeah, the GPP, putting together a lot of landmine movements just for some high volume, lower weight in there, but still just challenging and not afraid to get a little pump in that program.
No, the Meadows Row is a staple, one I've always enjoyed, and I think it hits the back in a really interesting way.
And you've drifted away from the old row where, imagine we had the chest parallel with the ground with one knee on the bench, one hand on the bench, and then a plant foot.
We did.
Why?
I read some research and also anecdotally from a friend who ended up with a bunch of tears and hernias in the stomach, and they were aggravated by that position. So the standing position with the hand bent over, like doing bent or over rows from a standing position, created a more advantageous position for the stomach. When the age old where the back's flat and the knees on the bench like we used to use was just less and a greater contributing factor for hernias. So and then there was also a piece of research that came out that it stressed the stomach in an interesting way. So that was just more of a pivot. And for me, I kind of liked the other one because I thought it was always a pain in the ass to get the heavy dumbbells out. And you're kneeling on a bench. And I've seen so many just douchey people at the gym do it that way. I just couldn't do it anymore. So the big way is just go over, grab the heavy dumbbell, put your hand on the rack, and just row your brains out. What a lot of times when we're rowing too, we're in that neutral grip. So we're pulling this way. What I like in the Meadows is that hand, the back of the hand is facing forward, so you're actually pulling this way, so you can get a higher pull. Whereas I think sometimes with the neutral, you can't pull as high. But you can handle more weight with a neutral grip than you can overhand. But what I really like about it is the bigger, because you're pulling from the collar. I like the bigger grip. So you can grip it this way. You can also do thumb over, but I actually like to grip it this way. So
straps, like what's the rule there?
Strap up. So when you really start talking about doing, max reps to mechanical failure and really pushing hypertrophy, you don't want your grip to be the limiting factor. You want the muscle to be the limiting factor. So you want to get to the point. If you have 10 more pulls in you, but you can't because you can't grip it, then that becomes a limiting factor. And now we're not creating the mechanical tension we need for really true failure.
Now, where would this fall? Let's say in a program, would it be paired up with another movement or just focus on it alone?
I like to do kind of some concurrent stuff. Like we do, I always enjoy PAP. I enjoy taking heavy compound movements and mixing them with more focused accessory movements. So like if we were going to pull heavy, we might do Meadows Rows as kind of a accessory movement for it. So like if we were going to do some heavy RDLs, it might pair well with some Meadows Rows. I also like to do it in a little pre-exhaustion type stuff, what I call density work, where we'll go in and we'll hit some real heavy focus, kind of unilateral back before we get into some heavy pulls. So it really varies. It's based on the program, but for the most part, you can't go wrong with them.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right. You ready to talk coach up some finer points?
Let's do it.
All right. Head them on to the gym.
So we're going to take you through the Meadows Rows. In memory of our good friend John Meadows, who recently passed away, we're going to take you through one of my favorite unilateral back accessory movements. So you're going to notice we're going to set this sucker up in a landmine position. We're going to elevate the position here on the foot, and we're going to load some 25s on here so Tex can get a lot of stretch. He's going to reach down, he's going to grab the collar, good flat back, and he's going to pull nice and high. If you notice, he's not getting any movement change in the hips. Good. Think about pulling just as high as you can. Don't rotate. Pull. So we're using an elevated position, and we're using some 25s so we can get a lot of stretch. If you only have 45s, maybe use 10s, whatever it is. If you only have 45s, we just elevate it up higher. The trick is to get nice and high on the pull, and then to get really a lot of extension at the bottom. And I think what's kind of cool of it on the landmine is that the position's not fixed. So it allows you to kind of play with it a little bit, pull it up a little bit higher towards the front of the shoulder, and then pull it a little bit higher back towards the hip and see where it really hits. You can get a little bit lower, get a little bit more lat, a little bit more rhomboid. So this is the Meadows Row with a landmine attachment. You can also use it in the T-bar attachment, or really just jam this thing into a corner, throw a couple sandbags on top, and do a makeshift landmine. So that is Power Athletes Master of Movements, Meadows Rows.
And the masters of the universe. I am Adam.